Hello and welcome back to some more matchcasts of the Reddit League. This week, in week 3, we're doing Jake Lyons against Ollie on the map one location per city/town worldwide, and today I'm joined by Lunacy. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm happy to be here, happy to be casting, and happy to be watching some high-level GeoGuessr.
Yeah, we'll see about that high-level GeoGuessr as we get in later, but nice to have you here. And let's take a look at where they are playing today. It is, as I said before, the map one location per city/town worldwide by one of our own competitors, Mr. Blue. Plenty of locations, all handpicked as well, if I remember correctly. So that must have taken a long time. I think it says in the description there, it's 77,900 unique locations. He talked to me about it earlier. Well, I'll say earlier, before we started into this week, so like 3 weeks ago, how he wanted to add a few more locations before I actually created the seeds. So I think he might have just gone over 80,000 by the time those seeds were created. And yeah, what's your general opinions about the map?
Well, I like the idea that Mr. Blue thinks that over 2,000 locations is a few. I'm doing air quotes. But I think this map is actually a pretty fun map for the purposes of this Reddit League specifically. I mean, world maps and like country-specific maps always play a little bit differently in that world maps often have a bit of a higher score usually. But when comparing people on these kinds of world maps, I find that the most interesting thing to do is to see how different people manage to find different clues and how they synthesize their knowledge of all these different places that you could get, as opposed to studying one place in particular. So this map, I think, is going to test a lot of how people, like how the players are able to gather information, find information, and use their background knowledge to help them. And the fact that it's one location per city and town means that you're probably going to have a lot of either smaller or lesser known places, but there's still going to be cities or towns, which means that there still should be information in places. So I think it's a pretty fun map and a very doable map to play. But we'll see
Yeah,
how they get on with that.
yeah, I agree, and good point about the part where you talked about how they get their information, because I always mention how it's important to kind of, as soon as you spawn into the round, like have a quick look and then have a game plan on, I'm in this country, what am I going to do to find out where I am? And kind of on the more country maps, state maps, etc. It kind of tends to end up in a similar fashion because people have looked at this for like a week if they've practiced, and they kind of know what the best way to gather information is. But on the world map, they might not have looked at this country for a while, might not be expecting it to come up, and so we kind of revert back to what they usually do when they're looking for information in a country, which is quite interesting to see. So yeah, let us start with the game right now. And it looks like round one might give a bit of an inherent advantage to Jake, seeing as it looks like we're in the US.
Yeah, right off the bat, you can pretty much tell this is North America. There's a lot of English around. There's a lot of green signs, and I believe Jake just passed a speed limit sign in miles per hour, or that doesn't specify kilometers per hour, which implies that it's the U.S.
Mm.
And right
Sequoia
now,
High
Jake is
School.
looking at a sign for Sequoia High School, and those kinds of trees tend to be populating the west coast of the states, or at least they're famous for that. So that
Oh,
might be a bit of a clue.
and Ollie has a Sequoia Union High School bus. So, it's found something similar to Jake. And
Yeah, looks like Jake has found a sign saying Redwood City, which is a city in the South Bay. Ollie also is looking in that general area, but may not have found the Redwood City sign that Jake has.
I don't think he has, no. He seems to be looking for a Sequoia, thinking it is a city, which, I don't blame him for. Kind of, could expect that. Um, oh,
Oh,
it did
yeah,
say,
Bay Cities there.
yeah, it also did say California on that one sign and Mateo County on that sheriff vehicle. So
Oh, yeah, San Mateo County.
if he remembers counties in California, that might help him, but there's probably easier ways to find it. I did say
Oh,
Redwood
for
City
sure.
on that banner.
Yeah, so if so Ollie knows it's California. If Ollie was able to take a look at that, we'll remember the fact that he also saw a Bay Cities sign. Maybe that might help. Jake is already now on pinpointing, I think. He might have found the relatively correct um relatively correct area is just trying to find where along the road he is. Ollie's still going on the main road, El Camino Real, the Royal Road, going all the way down California, and trying to see if he can find this city and if he can find James.
Yeah, I think he is in Redwood City. Just looking for the right, side road, and I think he's currently looking at the right area, as Jake does get his 5K.
Yep, a pretty speedy one too. Good bay knowledge from Jake there. Not only finding Redwood City pretty quickly, but also knowing exactly where it is.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, he does go to college, I think, in California, if I'm not completely wrong, which I hope I'm not. So maybe a little bit of home advantage there. But yeah, Ollie is in the right area. So if anything, he might lose a couple of points at most, which could make a difference on this map. We have seen Mr. Blue against, who was it? I don't quite remember. It might have been Pluki in week 1 in Finland, where it just came down to 1 point at the end of the day. But in general, you wouldn't really expect that kind of scenario to happen too often.
Yeah, but in the end, you never want to drop you never want to drop a point if you can help it. And given that Ollie has about a minute left, and Redwood City isn't too big,
Yeah.
yeah, Ollie already has found the right road as well, and now is just working on the more narrow pinpointing. But given that this is a world map, there should be quite a bit of leeway, somewhere around 200 or so meters, maybe a bit less, should away from the starting point should still give you a 5K.
Yeah, it's about between like 170 to 190, depending on the world map, as he won't need any leeway. A meter would have been enough, as he gets it right on.
Impressive 0 meter plonk from Ollie there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's always very nice to see. But yeah, for a first round, not too much trouble. You could have run into problems there if, I suppose, didn't really know what base cities were, didn't really know which part of the USA you were in. But once you had those informations, I don't think it was too difficult to find Redwood City, even if you had to look through all of California.
yeah, for sure. And even though it's a bit of a small city itself, it's part of a very, very large and sprawling metro area, which means there's going to be lots of very urban-looking clues around. So
Yeah.
very happy to see both of them 5K, but maybe it wasn't the hardest seed you could have had.
Yeah, and you can tell that usually. Like, there's a pretty big difference between like a rural city in the US and something that is part of such, like a big metropolitan area where it just kind of looks very different. So just by look, you were able to tell it was probably going to be either, Bay Area or Los Angeles somewhere.
Yeah, especially with California.
Yes, well, that helps.
Yeah.
All right, then let's get into round number 2 now. And that's certainly not the US. Quite different. And, well,
Absolutely
that,
not.
that gives them the country straight away.
Yeah, well, Ollie definitely knows it's Spain, and Jake can see Spanish and can see the European license plate. So I would guess that both of them know that they're in Spain pretty quickly off the bat here.
Yeah, and Ollie actually found like a road sign. I think I walked through this whole place for 4 minutes. I never found a road sign. Jake did as well, so I guess I'm just blind. But this kind of
Yeah.
location can be very tricky, these kind of industrial areas, because it's very hard usually to tell which direction you're supposed to go to get to somewhere that's not within the industrial area.
Yeah, especially since everything is like sort of geometrically laid out because it's meant to house these like really big buildings.
Hmm.
Um, it's often hard to tell where in the country you are, and it's often hard to tell where in this area you are, even when you get to pinpointing.
Yeah, it does look very dry, and you do see a lot of water, which, quite likely is the ocean in, I don't think there's any big lakes in Spain, actually, now that I think about it. I can't think of one. There
Should be in the
probably
ocean
is.
too, especially yeah, especially since Jake saw a sign for Puerto Real,
Yeah,
implying that they're near a port of some kind.
you do get ports on lakes and rivers occasionally, but, probably
True. Yeah.
high percentage place to assume it's the ocean.
Yeah. Anyways, both players it looks like are still wandering around this industrial area, but Ollie seems to have found a sign for Seville or something in the area. Is now zooming into
Interesting.
that uh, pretty big city and plonking out what seems to be an industrial area there.
Yeah, it isn't Sevilla, I can tell you that much. So I don't know what exactly he's seen. Like even after he, went away from the map and you could see what he was looking at, I still didn't see anything mentioning that city. But I mean, you still got 2 minutes to figure that out. While Jake seems to have made it to a bigger road, potentially leading
Yeah,
to a highway.
potentially. And there's a big sign with some pretty useful information if Jake can navigate his way
Oh,
over.
yeah, that's good
Ollie
enough.
trying to road match at the moment, but unfortunately will not be able to find that particular road because he's not in Seville.
Yeah, Jerez de la Frontera probably. I mean, unless there's some cities hidden behind Jake's face on that sign, Jerez probably the most recognizable city of those. And
Yeah,
he is
and
moving
even if you don't
away.
recognize the cities.
There we go. He
Yeah.
was moving away from
Yeah.
the water, which was slightly questionable, but he has made it into
Yep.
Puerto Real now.
Yeah. Jake has found Puerto Real. Ollie passed by a truck with the word Cadiz on it earlier.
Hmm.
So that might maybe give him a clue about where else to look.
But he's also at the same place that Jake was at just before. So if you can,
Mm,
just take a couple steps back, uh, there we go. All right, he's looking at the same sign. Oh, it does say Sevilla on that sign too. So, yeah.
yeah,
Well, that might actually not help him that much.
yeah. True. Ollie now only has 30 or so seconds to locate Puerto Real and pinpoint, whereas Jake is already in the general industrial area and is just backtracking based on that giant roundabout, which is a pretty useful landmark to find.
Yeah, there's definitely a few roundabouts there, but I think he might have found the right place. There are a few PYs at the start that can help you with the exact place. And Ollie, just in time, has made it into Puerto Real, but he won't have time to pinpoint.
Yeah, with just about 10 seconds left, that's going to be very difficult. But luckily, he gets a pin down at least, which means that he's not going to lose the points that he would have if he had gone in Seville.
Yeah, definitely makes a big difference there. I mean, Sevilla is not too far away, but I think it probably would have been over 100 points dropped. So very good for him that he did find Puerto Real just in time at the end there, and does manage to at least stay in the draw range.
Yeah, yeah. Like, it's a world, again, because it's a world map, you're not going to lose too many points, even if you're on the other side of the city. But still, you want to get every point you can. And Jake is now on par for a pretty good score with two 5Ks. I'm sure that's also good for morale.
Yeah, definitely has never gotten 25k before. So it might, you say on one hand it might be good for morale. On the other hand, it might be bad for nerves. The further he gets into that potential perfect score, he might be starting to get nervous and make some faultless mistakes. But let's hope for his sake that that doesn't appear this time as we get into round number 3 now. And kind of looks Central Eastern European to start with.
Yep. Jake is looking at a sign with the sort of Czechoslovak like Futura font on it.
Mm-hmm. Oprava. I think Oprava. No, I think it might be Opava that I'm thinking of, which is a city
Yeah.
in Czechia, but not quite.
Yep.
Uh,
Ollie now plonking in Slovakia.
yeah.
Looking around.
Nitrianskeho might actually have something to do with Nitra that he is currently looking at.
That makes sense. I didn't realize that there was more you could have gotten out of that sign, but it seems
Yeah.
to be pretty useful. Jake currently going west, not finding too much. Ollie scanning around Nitra.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I say not finding much. Jake has now found the name of the town, which is Lehota,
Yeah.
which, if
Which
Ollie knows
also
to
on
look
that
into
sign.
Nitra, Ollie must already know. Yeah, that Lehota is the place.
That's a good sign. Um, Yeah, Jake went back to the start, decided to try the opposite direction, the one that Ollie is also currently heading in. And
Yeah.
as we kind of see there already on Ollie's screen, definitely a good decision.
Oh yeah, this one image here is probably like NMPZ 5Kable, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. And he's
Yeah,
got
like
it.
you see, yeah, you see Nitra nearby, you see Lehota. All you need to do now, once you find Lehota, is backtrack. And since it's not a huge city, and you're starting at a pretty distinctive looking road, with like Y fork there,
Mm,
shouldn't be too hard once you find Lehota. So finding Lehota, in the first place would be the hard part here.
Yeah, for sure. As
Jake,
Ollie
yeah,
gets his 5K.
incredibly fast, very well done. Jake has seen the sign but is continuing to move down the road, perhaps trying to figure out what other cities might be nearby, maybe trying to triangulate.
Yeah, I think he's
Oh,
just
never
kind
mind.
of
He finds
he's
Lahota.
kind of just completely ignored the fact that he was exiting Lehota. But you mentioned earlier before we started recording about how you didn't really like going one direction for too long. And this is definitely one of those rounds where that can hurt you. Because when I played this seed, only went west. And I can tell you there's not such a great sign there. But like I ended up finding Velký Salužie in all of Slovakia, just looking through the country because I had no more information. So it's possible, but it was like a last second thing. So definitely a good choice from Jake to turn around there, and he does seem to be at the right place now and
For
will
sure,
get
yeah.
this third 5K.
Yeah, and one thing about being in Division 4, the difference between the divisions, there's no like real difficulty difference because all the seeds are randomly generated, but what is a difference is the amount of time you have. So you have more leeway to go further in one direction before making the choice to perhaps go back and go the other way if you're not finding too much. The fact that you have more time means that there's more things that you can do with that time as well, and that's one thing that people in different divisions think about differently, at least I assume.
Yeah, and it's always kind of the thing where some people might look at this and say, well, 20 seconds difference to like the Division 3, what's the big deal? It's not that much. But these differences in time can change a lot of how you play around. It's most of the time it's not really just okay, I have a little bit more time. It's okay, I know I have a minute more than, Division 1 players for example have. So I can afford to maybe spend half a minute or so just looking at the map if I find a town sign. For example, just, waste in quotation mark a little bit more time, but know that I have that time to spend.
Right, yeah, like D1 players really have to maximize the amount of time that they have and know exactly what to do with the information that they have. There's a bit, maybe perhaps a bit more room for, like, spending a bit more time scanning or a bit more time going around to what looks like maybe not the best area for clues in lower divisions. And I think that the players here that we've been watching so far have been making use of that time pretty well. For example, Ollie had been scanning around a bit more before finding a sign for Puerto Real at the very end of the Spain round and just getting the city at the very end. Like if Ollie had been on a D1 timer, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Though again, as I said, he might have played the round differently if he had been on a D1 timer. But, if they get to D1 eventually, in 3 seasons at least, we might see how they handle that. But for now, we are in Division 4. So let's look at round number 4 now. And, well, that's quite a different vibe we get of the start here compared to the last 3 rounds.
Absolutely, yeah. Lots of very tropical foliage, some Southeast Asian architecture, it looks like. The tiled roofs, and the Latin text with very few diacritics means that you're probably going to be in either Malaysia or Indonesia.
And Jake has learned all the, well, I say all, probably close to all the kabupatens of Indonesia for the World Cup, as he struggles to remember where this particular one is, but he has found it. And a real
Yeah.
rarity we have here for, not a very big city in Indonesia is that we do have a street sign close to the start that tells them the name of their street, which doesn't happen often, and
Oh,
definitely
true.
makes
Yeah.
makes pinpointing here much easier than it could have been.
Yeah. And if anyone's watching and doesn't know, Indonesia is divided into like somewhere around 500 or so like subdivisions or regencies they call kabupaten. And the reason that it might be useful to learn all 500 of them is because their names pop up so often on signs wherever you go. So Jake found the word Ponorogo on one of the signs he passed, identified it as a subdivision that he had studied, and knew where it was.
Yeah, and not only do they pop up quite often, there's not much else that pops up quite often. So in a lot of scenarios, it really is the only good information you are gonna get. So definitely can pay off quite a bit because Indonesia is also not the easiest place to region guess either. So it's not like I don't know some other countries where you can be like, okay, I might not know exactly where this town is, but I can at least it's probably in that area kind of. Uh,
Yeah.
Indonesia is region guessable, but also requires a lot of practice. So probably learning the couple patterns is just the most efficient way to get good at the country.
True, yeah. There may be a couple other ways that might get you a general vibe. Like, for example, Java and maybe a bit of Sumatra often have more of these like tiled roofs. Perhaps that's why Ollie is currently on Java. I believe that there are also like area-specific cars for Indonesia.
Mm,
Like, it's it's possible that one of them has identified, or you could identify it as an East Java car, but who knows?
I certainly don't, as Ollie will continue to struggle to find the exact town. It's not actually one of the smallest towns, which although obviously you can. It's difficult to know that for sure how far you need to zoom in to find something. And he's kind of just going over the top of it, a bit too far to the north.
Yeah, it's a bit rough too because there's so many like slightly smaller but still very big and very significant towns and cities in Indonesia, and the way that the Google Maps Street View like map layout makes it like the way it's structured makes it a little bit hard sometimes to identify which things are towns and which things are just like roads through wilderness.
Yeah, definitely. As Jake has found the right road, and he has 15 more seconds to get it on the right place on that road.
Yeah, it looks like if Jake matches up the roads, he should have the 5K there. Ollie currently just in Central Java, not too far from Ponorogo. It's on the screen, but unfortunately he doesn't spot it in time.
Mm.
Jake reacting very happily for that 5K there. And Indonesia is not an easy country to 5K, so
Yeah.
like kudos to Jake and honestly kudos to Ollie for even getting close on what is a country that could like drop you over 1,000 points even if you're still in the right country.
Yeah, definitely. I think for Indonesia, this was probably one of the easier rounds, considering you were in like at least a mid-sized city. But also, it's not Jakarta, so you're not gonna take 10 minutes to pinpoint where on earth you are in that city. And with the street sign there as well, probably rather easy for Indonesia, but it's still Indonesia, as you said. So it's never gonna be very easy. But yeah, Jake, very happy about that. And he now only has to get one more round correctly to get his first
Right,
perfect
yeah.
score.
That was a pretty significantly important round too, because Ollie dropping a couple hundred points means that Ollie is now out of draw range, and Jake currently at a perfect score means that if Jake pulls off another perfect score, then there's no way for Ollie to catch up. So Ollie now, without knowing, of course, that Jake has a perfect score so far, Ollie needs to hope that Jake is not doing as well or does not do as well in this final round.
Yep. And we will start that final round right now. And that is not a good sign for Ollie in this case, because it does seem like we may very well be in the US again.
Yeah, with perhaps a bit similar foliage to the round one location. It looks like from for things like the double yellows, the poles, the language, and the speed limit signs that this is probably going to be the US again.
Yeah, it does look a lot colder. Um, but Ollie there has a sign that says City of Pacific, so he at least, knows the right coast. Is looking Canada
Yeah,
though.
I love it when the town of the name helps you figure out where it is.
Yeah.
Ollie, for some reason, scanning the Aleutian Islands, despite there being no coverage there. But interesting in that Ollie is now looking through Alaska, scanning for Pacific, whereas Jake is avoiding scanning entirely, choosing to search around for more clues.
Yeah, I think in this specific case, looking around for more clues first is the better play, because it doesn't look like, if you remember back to Redwood City, which looked like kind of a very highly populated suburb of a bigger metropolitan area. This kind of gives more of, maybe still a suburban vibe, but less populated. So maybe not as close to a bigger metropolitan area.
Yeah, like all the houses are a lot more spaced out. There's a lot more greenery in between all the houses as well. You've got these like huge warehouse type buildings. That I say that as Jake passes one. So it probably won't be something super tightly bound by a metropolitan area. But of course, areas like the Seattle metropolitan area or like the Portland area are sprawling enough that you might see these on like the outskirts of those suburbs as
Yeah.
well.
And he did find a sign there saying entering Sumner, which already appears on his map. If you look at his minimized map in the bottom right there, it's right in the middle of it, which is always great.
Oh my god. Whenever my map goes to minimum and I like start going back into the roads to start searching, I always take a look at it because I've had so many rounds before where it's just showed up on the mini map and I've
Mm,
been so embarrassed by the fact that it's been there the whole time. Jake has now found a very, very helpful sign. Not only are these very recognizable cities, like he knows he's between Seattle and Tacoma, even if you didn't know what those cities were, the Washington State road shield is there to tell you
yep.
exactly which state road you're on.
He was very close to ignoring Sumner again, but he has now found it. The slightly problematic part here potentially is that he was just entering Sumner from the north, and it can be very difficult in these suburban industrial areas to tell how big one of those, small towns is on the map. This one happens to be quite large. So he is quite far north of where it says Sumner on the map, but it does seem like
Yeah.
he's getting there.
With one difficulty here also being that I believe Ollie found the sign for City of Pacific. Jake, I don't think found that at all. I don't think Jake only found the sign for Sumner.
Yes, true. But he does have the road names, and I think he is right there. Yes.
He is with 30 seconds remaining. He's found both roads. I think he's somewhat confused because those road signs say southwest, whereas that says
Yes.
southeast in the minimap. That might just be a bit of Google being weird there, though.
Yeah. He does one another very important thing to do, which I've made the mistake before, is you are in a place, you keep looking for their street names, eventually you find them, and you make the mistake that you think, okay, that's where I started, and you click guess and forget that you were a couple meters down the road. But
Yeah.
Jake won't do that. He will get his perfect score as Ollie drops another 78 points there. Not really consequential for him. Ends his game on 24,599. But yeah, fantastic job from Jake. Gets his first 25k in a seat that was, slightly favorable to him with a location in Indonesia and 2 in the US, but still have to do it first.
Absolutely. And Ollie, despite the fact that Ollie dropped points on a few of the rounds, still did incredibly well, I thought, for a very difficult round. Like when I played this, I definitely didn't 5K the last one because I was spending too long scanning. I thought the Pacific would be more findable. But Ollie was able to get close in all the locations with a very good guess in Indonesia, despite it being maybe the biggest point loss, perhaps one of the more impressive region guesses or based on whatever clues Ollie was able to find. Still, though, 25,000 from Jake, incredible work. That's as good as you can do on this seed. And I'm sure that he's very happy with not just 3 points for the win and also the one bonus point for the perfect score, which is why that matters.
Yeah, definitely 4 points for him for that. So let's take a quick look at those stats that they now have after those 3 weeks. And Jake, so far, pretty much perfect. 3 games, 3 wins, 1 bonus point for a perfect score. So everything going perfect for him. 10 points currently at the top of the table. And Ollie with that loss, first loss of the season, still in a decent position. But yeah, not quite as high up as he was before. Let me quickly check if that was enough for a bonus point because I don't remember. No, unfortunately, it was not. So 0 points for Ollie this week, but he's still up there, sort of in the mid-table in fifth position right now.
Yeah, and Ollie has historically been a pretty consistent player in this division as well. I have no doubt that Ollie can hold his own. But we'll see if this will be Jake's season, not just to hold his own as he has been, but to excel to the point where he can reach promotion to Division 3.
Yeah, and he's been kind of trying to do that for the past 2 seasons or so. I think he's definitely got the ability to do it. It'll just be a big, kind of the same big factor that has been the case for him for, the previous seasons as well, is can he do this consistently? Because he's kind of had the same problems as me occasionally where, he'll get those 4 good rounds and then just, mess up one round and that costs him the game. And he'll have
Yeah,
to,
the nerves.
go on.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say nerves on round 5 of a game where you have a perfect score going in are pretty tough. I've definitely found myself in the position of messing up what would otherwise have been a perfect score on multiple occasions in Reddit League, and I feel like we've talked about this before. You have as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've actually, messed up the last round too often. Funnily enough, I usually tend to mess up before and then just finish the game off well. But yeah, definitely a big factor. And, the fact that he's shown that he can do it here, can withstand those nerves and get that perfect score as well, is definitely a good factor, a good showing for him going into the, third of the season now. I was trying to say second half, but we're not really close to that yet. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah. Now that
Anything?
they have one of these world maps out of the way means that it's time once again to start studying those individual countries. So perhaps Jake, being a very well-seasoned world player, might have a bit of a more tough time facing off against other players who might perhaps be a bit more practiced in the specific maps that we're playing. But who knows?
Yeah, that being said, we do have Virginia in week 5. So as an American, might be good for him. We do have another world map in week 7. We do have South America in week 8, which is not quite a world map, but not really the map you're going to be able to practice too much for and going to be able to improve a lot in a week on. So there's definitely potential for him there. Probably will be struggling a bit in Lithuania, I imagine. So I think if he can get through Lithuania with a win, I think he's probably, well, for sure, one of the favorites for the promotion spot.
All right, yeah, that 4B race is looking intense. Both Jake and Ollie putting in their all, and honestly, I could see a world where both of them at least reach the fight for promotion as well.
Yeah, a lot of strong players in that division, but those two are certainly part of them. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching this game. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you guys next time. Bye. You need to say bye too.
Oh, bye. Tune in next time to more Reddit League.